A robbery, new kids, and Eleven's return. That must mean one thing. Stranger Things Season 2 is here, so let's break down the first episode. How's it going, y'all? Lisa here, and at long last, Season 2 of Stranger Things has arrived, and right here on What Happened, my TV recap show, instead of doing a video on just the season as a whole, which I probably will end up doing, I'm going to actually break it down episode by episode, so that way you can maybe see little clues, or we can talk about our favorite moments in each episode. Also, I haven't binged the season. I'm actually watching an episode and then making a recap, then watching an episode, making a recap, so I don't know what is ahead for each episode when you watch these recaps. So first, my initial thoughts on the first episode. As soon as I turned it on, I was like immediately transported back to the 80s, full of classic songs like Whip It and Rock You Like a Hurricane. There were mullets, Mr. Mom, just a lot of nostalgia, which I love, but also the storyline is still really good, and I'm excited to see how this season plays out. So let's dive into Chapter 1 titled MADMAX. The episode opens not actually in Hawkins, but in Pittsburgh in the midst of a robbery and police chase. What we learn from this scene is that Eleven is not the only one of her kind walking around, which makes sense because if she's number 11, what happened to numbers 1 through 10? So in the scene, a ragtag group of burglars in Halloween masks get chased by the cops. When Mohawk Guy asks the girl in the passenger seat to do something, she tells the driver to go through a tunnel, and as the car enters, she closes her eyes, clenches her fists, and says, "Boom!" And all of a sudden, part of the tunnel breaks off onto the police cars and in the chase. Then this happens. We now have our 8 with her badass side-shaped head, though it raises a lot of questions. Is she originally from Hawkins? How did she get her abilities? Was it in the same way that 11 got hers? If she is from Hawkins, how did she escape and get to Pittsburgh? I'm excited to actually see this storyline progress this season. Now let's go back to Hawkins. For Mike, he is still pining after 11, thinking she's stuck in the Upside Down. He even spends most of his time trying to call out to her on his radio on a channel that Dustin keeps asking Mike why he's on, since he's never on the group's normal channel. Mike has also been acting out a lot as his parents give a laundry list of what he's been in trouble for recently, which includes stealing money from Nancy's piggy bank. And I have to say, Nancy must really love her change because she ends up chasing Mike out into the street because of it. Mike's punishment for all this is to pack up 2 boxes of toys for a yard sale, and this is kind of when we see just how badly he's pining for 11. As he's putting toys into the box, there are 2 toys he just can't bring himself to put into the box, and that's his dinosaur Rory, which he showed to 11 in Season 1.
Oh, this is my dinosaur Rory.
And then he stops packing the box as he picks up his Millennium Falcon, which is what Dustin tried to get 11 to fly, which she did do, but it was when she was by herself. Both those toys, or at least the dinosaur, remind Mike of 11, and he looks over at her bed and he tries to call her on the radio again and hears something, but it just ends up being Dustin. Poor kid is just so heartbroken over 11 that it makes my heart break a little for him too. For Mike and the rest of the boys, they spend most of their time playing at the arcade trying to get the top scores on various games like Centipede and Dig Dug. And Dustin is not a happy camper when he learns his top scores on both those games have been overthrown by a user named MADMAX. At school the next day, there's a new girl in class, and guess what her name is? It is Max, and she's from California. And let's just say she and her brother made quite an entrance into Hawkins. The boys end up sort of stalking Max, and she definitely knows it. Stop spying on me, creeps. Dustin and Lucas are also crushing on her, and they see that she is indeed MADMAX as they watch her play Dig Dug at the arcade. Joyce seems to be happy as she has a boyfriend now named Bob, played by Sean Astin of Goonies fame and Rudy. They went to high school together, and from Bob and Hopper's comments, it seems like he was the nerdy kid in school that Joyce never noticed. He's pretty much a lovable goofball in this show. I mean, he loves Kenny Rogers and Mr. Mom, so he's pretty harmless, and I don't think he has any other agendas that are going to be coming down the pipeline. He actually ends up keeping Joyce calm, and after Season 1, Joyce needs some of that calmness in her life. Anyway, in the episode, we see Joyce working at the general store, and before we see her, there's a close-up of some Halloween masks on the shelves that they're selling. One of those, the mummy mask, actually is worn by one of the robbers we saw at the beginning of the episode, so are these connected somehow? I'm guessing there's a ton of stores that sell those masks though, right? Joyce is seen sewing a Ghostbusters costume, which we'll obviously see the kids wear later on Halloween. She's happy, she's in love, but she is still overly protective of Will and still super jumpy at times. As far as Will goes, he is still having visions of the Upside Down. At the arcade, Will hears something and sees the floating particles outside, so when he turns around and everyone else looks like they're gone, all of a sudden he is back in the Upside Down with a crazy storm with like red lightning flashes and really ominous clouds outside. Mike ends up coming outside and snapping him out of it to ask if he's okay. At school, kids are leaving Will notes in his locker calling him Zombie Boy, and he doesn't seem to like it too much. When he gets picked up at school later by Joyce, he goes to see his doctor, and Hopper is there too. But is this a real doctor? What is he? Because they are back at Hawkins National Laboratory, and that definitely not a hospital, so immediately red flags here. I am not trusting whoever this doctor is. Dr. Owens tries to be buddy-buddy with Will, asking him things like his favorite candy, but Will is really hesitant to answer any of his questions. He eventually does start to talk about his episode at the arcade. Now, Dr. Owens tells Hopper and Joyce that Will is suffering from PTSD, and he also says things are probably going to get worse before they get better, especially since the anniversary of the event is coming up, and Will might have more visions or lash out. Dr. Owens tells them that they just need to treat Will normally and be patient. Now, when Hopper and Joyce leave, Hopper tells Joyce that if anything gets worse to call him first, and he re-emphasizes it to call him first. We then see him look back at Dr. Owens from afar, so it seems like Hopper doesn't even trust Dr. Owens and wants to make sure that Joyce doesn't call that guy first. But shouldn't Hopper know not to trust anyone at that lab? Like, is he bringing Will here because of part of that deal that was made at the end of the episode when he got in the car? All I know is I am not trusting Dr. Owens one bit, and that is re-emphasized because as Will is talking about his episode, there are a group of men watching from another room because it's being, broadcast to them. So why do they need to know what Will is talking about? Later we see Dr. Owens go down an elevator into the underground lab where they are still researching the Upside Down. The gate is still there. There's a dude that takes a flamethrower to it. Yeah, looks like we're not getting rid of that problem anytime soon. And in the middle of the night, Will goes to the bathroom, and as he's washing his hands, he hears something. He ends up seeing the same red storm outside. Now when he goes outside, he sees something more in the sky this time, what looks like the shadow of a monster, of something with multiple legs. Moving on to Steve and Nancy. They are still together and seem more in love than ever, or at least Steve is in love with Nancy. Steve is trying to write his essay for early application to college, and he's trying to somehow compare a basketball game to his granddad's experiences in the war. Yeah, I think this essay is pretty much a mess, and I don't think even Nancy can save it. Steve even knows it's a mess, and he kind of ponders the idea of staying in Hawkins and working for his dad instead of going to college. That night, the two have a dinner at Barb's parents' house, and their house is basically a shrine for poor Barb. As they enjoy a delicious dinner of KFC, Nancy and Steve learn that Barb's parents are selling their house and spending all their money in order to hire a private investigator named Murray Bauman, who is going to find out what happened to Barb. Now, Barb's parents are so happy and hopeful at this point in time that it actually crushes Nancy, who obviously can't tell them what happened to Barb, and she ends up running to the bathroom to have a cry session. Now, speaking of that private investigator named Murray, he's actually more of just a journalist. It looks like he's been driving Hopper crazy, and all the cops know it. He's trying to figure out what happened in Hawkins, and it seems like he's moved on from alien theories to think that there's a Russian spy presence in Hawkins because there have been multiple reports of a Russian child with psionic abilities, that of course being 11. Hopper decides to give Murray like 5 minutes of his time in his office, and Murray continues to spat about the Russian girl and how he thinks Barb was maybe kidnapped and killed by Russian spies, and well, here's how Hopper responds. Hopper tells Murray he likes his alien theories, but heads off to check on Meryl's pumpkin patch where all the pumpkins have somehow rotted overnight. Meryl thinks his rivals poisoned them, but yeah, I'm thinking it's something else. There's some gross green goo on those pumpkins, and it happened way too fast for it to be normal like poison. We see Hopper return to his home at the end of the episode, and this dude has the house so protected and booby-trapped that I think Data from Goonies would be super proud. Hopper even has a certain knock sequence to get the door to unlock. So is he just protecting himself, or is he hiding something? On his kitchen table are 2 TV dinners and a plate with a half-eaten Eggo on it, so it's pretty clear what Hopper is hiding. He calls out, and a voice from another room scolds him for not sending a signal that he'd be home late. We then see 11 sit down at the table as Hopper informs her that it's always dinner before dessert. I don't know, Hopper. I might have to disagree with you on this one. So that wraps up this premiere episode, and I have to say, I thought it was a fun one. It definitely set up a lot of things, a lot of information crammed in here, but it's kind of like the branching points of where we're going to see this go throughout the season. As far as this monster goes, I know that there have been tons of theories since season 1 about how this new monster is maybe a Thessal Hydra from Dungeons & Dragons, just like a Demogorgon was, and the kids even referenced the Thessal Hydra at the end of season 1. That creature, though, however, has multiple heads, and from the look of this monster in this season, it has one huge head and a bunch of limbs that seem to kind of branch off. So I definitely think it was inspired by a Thessal Hydra, but I don't think it is one. As with any Stranger Things episode, there are a ton of great lines and moments, so here are a few of my favorites from this episode.
Just not nimble enough, but you'll get there one day. But until then, Princess Daphne is still mine. Come on, just get him the date.
I'm not prostituting my sister, but it's for a good cause.
Please welcome, all the way from sunny California, the latest passenger to join us on our curiosity voyage.
Oh, because you're such a threat.
That's right. She will not be able to resist these pearls.
This finger looking good.
That wraps up my recap of Season 2, Episode 1 of Stranger Things. Now it's your turn to hit up the comments. Let me know what you think about this episode so far. Let's keep it to this episode because, like I said, we'll talk about the whole season later. After that, I'm going to go watch Episode 2. You can check out that recap right over here because when it's done, I will put a link right here as well as any other Stranger Things videos that I got going on. I'm Lisa. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you soon.